Chapter 12, The Ghosts That Haunt Us. Clever, I like it. The next few days were both stressful yet uneventful. Okay, Brennan's a patient sort. We never found Brennan, even after multiple careful searches of the ruins where we first located the others. But there were no more disappearances, and everything seemed calm on the surface. Celeste suspected he was recovering from my attack on him. I wasn't sure I'd done that much damage, but I had no way of knowing, especially given my limited experience with this sort of thing. But maybe Celeste was right. Most people would take a couple of days to recover from a strong mental attack. Even with my shield and Celeste's intervention, it had taken me some time to recover from the mind bomb I encountered. I doubted my attack on Brennan had nearly that amount of force behind it, but he hadn't been prepared, and he didn't have someone like Celeste around to heal the damage. It worried me. My attack had been in self-defense, and I never wanted to hurt anyone. The idea I may have seriously harmed someone, necessary or not, was upsetting. That said, every search for him turned up empty. We could only assume he had escaped. That he was capable of evading us meant he hadn't been too seriously injured. I mean, I didn't get far after that mind bomb, but Brennan wasn't anywhere nearby. He was either more capable of handling pain than I was, or I had done little damage. Or he's closer than you think. And where could he even have gone? We assumed he had other bases of operation, so to speak. He'd been concentrated on the court for a while, so was it possible he just moved closer temporarily? Yeah, it's a possibility. That would mean he retreated to a safer place after being hurt by my attack. And, as a queen rank, that should have been easy enough as long as he could mimic a knight rank skill set. The point was, there was no trace of him. But we didn't know how long that would last. During the reprieve, everyone's thoughts had turned to some kind of solid preventive measures. That was, of course, easier said than done. Severing the links was one thing, but preventing them altogether wasn't something I knew how to do. Kesa had wondered if some kind of defense protocol within the nanosystem would help, but he was the only one capable of something like that, and he had other things to worry about as well. For instance, identifying the people we had rescued. Some of them were familiar to us. Like Rowan, they were people from the court. Others were not. And the unconscious ones had no way of telling us who they were. The ones that were still alive, anyway. 2 had already passed away. We had expected it, but it was still sad. We felt confident these were people Brennan had revived on his own utilizing the nanosystem. Tara had looked in their minds, something only feasible for normal Espers when the other person was unconscious anyway. She said it was like looking in the mind of a dead person. It was stark and cold. Their memories had degraded to a point most of them were unreadable. She wasn't sure how much actual thought they'd been capable of when awake, but she doubted any of them knew who they had been before he got a hold of them. They weren't really there anymore. Where we heard something similar recently. Sylvia said something kind of similar to us when we were talking to her. It was as if their bodies were functioning on autopilot. Not being able to save them was difficult. But without Brennan actively connected to them, it seemed they would just shut down over time. Even Psy couldn't revive people, not permanently. Was Brennan that uncaring when it came to other people? That he could treat them like objects? Or was he that desperate for some reason? Or maybe he just thought he was saving them somehow, giving them at least some semblance of life to cling to? I didn't know. And now we had another looming threat to deal with. One that was partially Brennan's fault, and partially mine.
Are you serious? Do you suspect I would be anything but when it comes to this? But why now? I guess we shouldn't be surprised they picked the absolute worst possible time to get off their collective ass and come to check things out. You must admit, if they were keeping an eye out to verify Morgan's location, she likely gave them exactly what they were looking for over the last week.
That wasn't my fault.
No, it was not. However, on its own, the psychic response to encountering Brennan's mind bomb was likely enough to get their notice. And after that, they likely noticed Brennan's actions, our response, and your actions there at the end. In the past, their approach to the court has been lenient. They certainly know of it. However, because of my involvement, they have been hands-off with us.
Wouldn't that make them more interested in getting involved?
They don't want to pick a fight with Crimson. That's why Magnus Ulrich hasn't shared that I am as involved as I am.
Interesting. Okay. Alright, so Endgame found us. Delightful.
Whether or not they like it, Crimson is an important pillar in Delphine's power structure. Were that to collapse, it would cause chaos here. You, however, are a different matter. And now that they've verified your location, it's only a matter of time before they come here. If they knew everything that happened, they'd already be here. As it is, we'll be lucky if we have another 2 days before their agents come knocking.
And what happens then? Should I expect to be grabbed off the street and shoved in a car again? After all, not everyone is polite enough to ask nicely like you. Beside me, Jack let out a soft snicker. Kesa gave us both a pained look. Even Velly's kind of snickering.
Unlike their knight, I don't possess the ability to warp reality. Taking you by force struck me as unwise.
At least you admit you were trying to kidnap me. To think all those parental lessons about not getting into cars with strange men would eventually come in handy.
Did they? As far as I can recall, you ended up in a car with Jack. She said she was taught not to get in cars with strange men, not handsome men. If it's based purely on looks, I still believe she would have been better off had she got into my car first.
Oh, pew 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 pew! Shots fired! He is distressingly beautiful. Children, there are more important things to discuss than an impromptu beauty contest.
But I'd win it, right?
Jack. I don't know, Kesa looked pretty confident in his ability. Adorable.
At any rate, if someone were to attempt an abduction at this stage, I would hope you are better able to protect yourself. And smart enough not to wander alone. Them trying to shove you in a car and drive off should be the least of your concerns right now. Endgame's job is to keep dangerous Espers off the street. And the court is full of dangerous Espers. Worst case, they decide it's time to clean the place out and rid themselves of an ongoing headache.
Is there a high chance of them doing that?
Unfortunately, I believe there is. In particular, with 2 dangerous queen ranks and a king rank here. I believe they are aware of Veli as well. So that makes 4 Espers they will be keen to take control of.
What happens to Espers they deem dangerous?
If they can't be convinced to join the ranks. There are a couple of high-security facilities in very isolated domes far out in the Trinity Desert. They get incarcerated at one of those if they're not cooperative. I will not allow them to incarcerate anyone. You're one of the people we need to worry about most, Kay. You know they've been wanting to get their hands on you for years. They just couldn't justify picking a fight with your father, and by extension, Delphine. Don't convince yourself Morgan is going to be their only target if they come here. Jack is right. I'm well aware of that. As you said, if they come, it will likely be for us all.
Hey, going up against Endgame. Okay, maybe Brennan won't actually end up being the big bad in the end. He'll just, like, disappear in the ensuing chaos at some point. I don't know. This is interesting. It could go so many different ways now. And that was now looming on the horizon in addition to Brennan. I had floated the idea of calling Endgame to Jack a couple of weeks ago, but not if it meant everyone here getting arrested. Since that meeting, I hadn't been able to shake a persistent feeling that something was heading for us. A dark, hovering event. In the past, I would have said such feelings were unreliable. Now, though, there was no way it was possible to make an assertion like that with a semblance of certainty. I just wish I had something more certain than something is going to happen. Hera and the other bishops were apparently monitoring the future? I didn't know how that worked exactly. Currently draped across a sofa in the lobby, I let out a strangled groan. I hated feeling like either Endgame or Brennan would show up at any moment and throw things into chaos again. And it felt like all we could do was wait for someone else to move first because we couldn't risk being the ones to do it. I need some air. I stood and stretched, missing the walks I used to go on with Jack in the evenings. The last few days we'd been sticking close to Cordis. The roof was my only option for getting air. Oh, your hair's brown again! And then I read, the brown hair startling me. Why now? It's like, oh, Endgame's coming? Gotta dye my hair brown in case Caleb shows up. My boy's coming to visit. I headed up to there only to encounter Jack at the top of the landing, the brown hair startling me again. He'd gone back to his natural color in the days following the rescue in the ruins, saying he hadn't really had time before. I thought it was just a response to the same restless sensation I had. He needed a change, and it was a simple way to feel like he'd done something. Like getting a haircut after a breakup. He denied it, saying he'd always meant to go back to it. I liked it, but I still wasn't quite used to it.
Hey, you busy, Morgan?
Not particularly. Do you need something?
Not right this minute. Kesa asked me to look around for a while. But afterwards, he wanted me to sit with you and go over some of his plans for if Endgame shows up.
With me?
Given everything that has happened, he agrees you have a knack for theokinetics. The bishops aren't having much luck looking into it. He wanted to see if you would.
Of course. Anything I can do to help.
I knew you'd say that. But don't stress about it, because I know you'll do that too.
I won't. Don't worry. Jack pulled me close for a quick kiss.
I'll come find you when I'm done, okay?
Alright. He gave me another squeeze and headed down to the lobby. I watched him go, feeling a sense of separation from the impending doom. No matter what we were waiting on, human relationships continued on as normal. Perhaps because it was inherent for humans to hope for the best. We couldn't put ourselves on hold until the bad thing passed. I'm expecting, potentially expecting Ari to just, like, pop in here and be like, hey. It could happen. I mean, he can teleport over great distances after all, and now she's by herself? It could happen. On the roof, I found myself looking out over the city with its perpetual overcast fog lingering above the buildings. So Kesa wanted me to look ahead for hints as to what was coming. I didn't even know how to do that. Not intentionally. I had looked back that time with Sylvia. It hadn't been intentional per se, since that journal entry had been a catalyst for almost forcing the connection. But I'd had plenty of time to analyze what had happened back then. Looking through the future with intent had to be somewhat the same, just in reverse. I figured I could do it regardless. If I could picture it, doing it wasn't far behind. Looking to the past was like reaching your hand through a telescope, finding a specific point, encircling it with your sphere, and pulling the rest of yourself through. If I imagined time, I pictured a path shrouded in fog, but with infinite branches on either side. That, I suppose, was why looking ahead was so much harder than looking behind. There were numerous possible futures, but only one path that led us to where we were. As I pictured this in my head, thinking how precognition might work and if I could really help sense what might be ahead, there was a tiny flicker, something at the edge of my consciousness. No, not something. Someone. I recognized that sigh. Brennan! At first, I feared it was another mind bomb, a sign that he was back. But no, it was more like a thread. A trail of breadcrumbs reaching to the path behind us. I realized this was the same as before, when I looked back and saw Sylvia. It was postcognition, looking into the past. But why do I sense Brennan's sigh? Maybe because I'd been thinking about him, I'd honed in on that part of the past. I remembered something Sylvia said to me, that the past was as important as the future. I didn't know if I should look, but maybe I would see something helpful? Something Kesa hadn't seen before? And maybe it would be good practice for what Jack wanted me to do later. Yeah, sure, I'm sure this couldn't possibly end badly at all. So I grabbed the thread of Psi and followed it back on a path walked, not by myself, but by a man named Brennan Raw. An image took shape. More than one. Sterile hallways. A lab, eh? Laboratories. Cell-like rooms with an astringent smell. Interesting. So he's showing you this. There was a man, strapped into a machine, a device attached to him. For a moment, his face was blurred. This wasn't quite the same as the thing with Sylvia. I wasn't connecting with him in any way, just watching from a distance. This past I already knew. The experiments, leaving his room only for tests, connected to that thing I could only assume controlled his Psi. Never knowing a life outside the lab, or human touch, or family, or home. Endgame would come all the way to Chestershire for me, or even to wipe out the court as soon as they had a viable excuse. But they'd let something like this pass until it was convenient to wipe up the mess? It was infuriating. How did they justify this? As I watched the inhumane scenes flicker past one by one, I couldn't help but feel we should have reached out to Brennan, tried to understand him sooner. Maybe it would have been possible to prevent everything that had transpired. Hold on a second. 05. I was just like, is that a number I see? It is a number. A moment flashed past. Brennan in a cold room, restrained in that compartment where they kept him. Alone. Hopeless. Without realizing, I tried to reach for him to offer some comfort, forgetting I wasn't even really there. Oh. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. And then I was. I could taste the bitter air, feel the stale cold emanating from the tile and glass. It was all too real. I pulled back in a panic, unleashing a maelstrom of powerful Psi in the process of tearing myself from that past reality and back to the present. You caused the power outage! You caused the power outage! That's amazing. I love that. So Brennan's future self helped his past... Oh, this is why time travel hurts so much. His future self helped his past self escape. Okay. Okay. Alright. Okay. Alright. I love it. As I faded, I saw the power flicker, heard the glass crack. Yo! And who could it be but this boy right here? Brennan looked up at me as the lights went out.
Who are you?
His mouth formed the words, though I couldn't hear them. And I was spinning away from him, out of that small room, into the hall, through the room across from him like being pulled back to the present. But on the way, I met the startled gaze of a familiar face. For a moment, we connected too. Sylvia? No! Whoa, Rory! Really? We ran into Rory in here too. Poor Rory. Rory! And then I was back. That's great. That was amazing. I stood panting on the rooftop, gripping the rail with both hands. Shit! I hadn't intended for that to happen. And at least Brennan was like, I needed to wait for the day when I send her back, and now I shall reveal myself.
So today was the day. I was right in assuming it hadn't happened yet.
I whirled around, startled to meet the gaze of... Brandon? No. I knew that face. You're him. My God, how did we not realize that? He was right here the whole time! He'd mimicked someone else's sigh and fooled us completely. I was on guard the moment he came towards me.
Psi is still such a strange power, isn't it? Beyond the tests, the illicit experiments, humans think we know so much about it. Yet it can still do so much we have yet to figure out. I never knew it could be used to do something like that. Even after I saw it that day, I didn't understand. Not until I found you again.
He didn't attack. He just joined me at the railing and looked across the city. For a moment, I watched him as he shut his eyes and lifted his head as if he was just enjoying the feel of the cool air. What do you want?
I wish I could answer that. I thought I knew. I thought I just wanted to make them stop. To make them stop hurting us.
Them?
People. Non-Espers. The ones who always treat us like they're lab rats.
If that's what you want, then why were you attacking us?
It wasn't... I didn't attack you. But I needed your strength.
If you needed our strength, why not just ask for it?
You wouldn't have understood. No one ever understands unless I make them.
You only made us hate you. I mean, she already said she was feeling bad for him. Because she felt bad for him, she set the whole ball rolling for his escape. Yeah, we've been a very emotional person this route. Try our girl. See if she understands. I mean, she saw it with her own eyes. Why don't you try me? I might surprise you.
No one ever surprises me. Though if anyone would, it would be you.
What are you really trying to do? I didn't expect him to answer me. He turned his expressionless face my way, then looked out over the city again.
When I first left that place, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to make them suffer. I wanted to make sure they couldn't do that sort of thing again. I wanted to free everyone that was there and take them somewhere better. But I didn't know how to do any of it. Not alone.
So you started gathering people.
I think I gathered the first ones because I didn't want to be alone anymore. I was alone for so long. Then I had the idea we could change things if we had enough. Like Legion. An unstoppable force. If there were enough of us, they'd have to listen to what we said.
But you can't just override people's wishes. You were hurting them.
I assumed they'd understand. I thought I'd show them. Because we were together.
He sounded perplexed, like a child who wasn't quite sure why something hadn't worked out as intended.
You believe it was the wrong thing to do.
I thought long and hard about how to answer that after I'd assured him I would try to understand him. Of course it was the wrong thing to do, but would a man who spent his entire life being tortured in a lab understand that? How could he? I imagine it's easy for people who have never suffered to make declarations of right and wrong, and that for those who have suffered it might be difficult to find a path others would call right. But sometimes it's not as simple as right or wrong.
You know, you're very kind.
I don't think I'm that kind.
You are. Some people get to be like that, I guess. You've lived in the light all your life, so maybe that's why. It would be better if there was a world where everyone got to live like that.
That's what people are trying to do here.
Even this court is part of the dark parts of this world. It's different from what I expected. Both better and worse. You wondered why I tried to take you all. I was disappointed by what I saw when I came here. Angry. This is what I wanted too. A place to be free. A place they couldn't touch. A place we could own. I gathered enough people, and I had no place to give them. But he gathered this many in one place. And you see what it's like. There's so much pain. Poverty. People struggling to live.
But they are living.
Not as free as they should be. I expected more.
There are limitations to what Kesa can do without being noticed.
Those limitations are always the problem, aren't they? I thought that he was too constrained. Too many concerns and dangerous connections he can't destroy. He's too tied down. That's why I wanted to take it from him. I don't have any connections at all, so I can do what I want. With people like you here, no one could stop us. That's what I thought. Instead, you stopped me.
You can't try to take over this place and think we won't fight back.
You're right. I guess this is another place I don't belong.
You could...
You know Endgame is coming here.
Well, I guess two somewhat irresponsible queen ranks caught their attention.
You caught their attention. But you never would have if it wasn't for me.
That's not...
It'll be sooner than you all think. Very soon.
How soon?
If you look ahead a little, you'll realize they're already here.
What?
Don't worry. I will be a villain for you one more time. As a gift. An apology, maybe.
I'm just sad. This is... I'm just sad. Why? You could... Man, I just want to... Just like William, I want to hug this guy. Like, he didn't actually hurt anybody. He didn't. I mean, yes, he caused a lot of stress and worry and took people over, but I feel bad for him. And now what are you gonna do? What's your plan to, like, save us from Endgame? Are you gonna just, like, distract them so that they take you instead of everybody here? Is that your way of paying Morgan back for rescuing you all that time? I don't know. I'm just sad. Anyway.
Because you stayed kind. And because I have some grievances to air with them anyway.
Wait. What? What? My vision fuzzed slightly, like static in front of my eyes. What is...
Morgan?
I shook my head, turning to Rory. And my vision cleared. What is that? What happened? What's with the fuzzy TV? I snapped my head back to Brennan, but he was gone. He wasn't even there? So, projection? Could have been projection, I guess.
Are you okay? You were talking to yourself.
Wait, had that been in my head? Brennan had never been here at all, had he? Had he even been... Nobody else interacted with him. Maybe even when she gave him that blanket and the tea, he wasn't even there. He could have just been projecting himself from wherever he was. That would be wild. So where was he now? And Endgame. I gripped my head, trying to put all the pieces together. Jack burst through the door without warning, face ashen.
Morgan, we have a problem!
Endgame or Brennan?
Endgame. They're here.
We may have a bigger problem. because Brennan is too. Or at least he was.
What?
I'll catch you up on everything on the way down. We soon found ourselves in the lobby of Cordis, which seemed to be the usual meeting place. Kesa had been lurking in the area for several days, and I wondered how he was justifying this to his father. Same. They had said he couldn't usually get away with spending much time here. Then again, an existential crisis for the court could impact Crimson as well, especially if his father considered my presence here a win for them. It's possible. I would think he would just say, get the queen to the mansion immediately, and we will increase security and whatever. I don't care about the court. But who knows? Dad could surprise me. And surely if I moved to a new location, Endgame would follow. Okay, well, that is a possibility. I think it would be harder for them to approach the Fianchetto mansion, though. For now, that wasn't what we were discussing, though. First, I shared what happened on the rooftop, much to everyone else's surprise and dismay.
So you ended up looking into his past. Just like that.
Should it have been more difficult?
Postcognition is much easier when it's centered on a place or an object. You had neither one and are saying you followed a trail of familiar Psi. It's definitely a new one for me, but I should be getting used to that with you. I don't know if it's just that you have no idea how the hell things are supposed to work, so you stumble into new ways to do things, or if you're really just that good.
I wanted to tell her I was fairly certain it was the former. Part of me was too terrified to consider if it was the latter. Ah, so you do remember that day.
I remember that.
That's good, that gives like some credence to what she said. Everyone looked at him when he spoke in a soft voice from where he was lurking nearby.
I mean, it was just a momentary flash. I didn't know what it was at the time, and I forgot it for a while. But I remember it. That's why I recognized you that day. My mind was still really muddled back then, but I recognized you.
That doesn't make sense. You weren't looking ahead. With Sylvia, we connected because she was looking ahead at the same time I was looking back. So how did I connect with someone who wasn't doing that?
I don't know. That's the other thing. Based on what you said, you may have caused the breach that freed Brennan, and he saw you. If you were just looking back, how could you physically affect things? It's not like you traveled through time.
Or did she?
Perhaps she did. There's a lot about her abilities we still don't know. There's a lot about Psi abilities in general that we don't know. She may not have physically moved through time, but, in a way, her Psi did exactly that.
Like a ghost. Gotcha.
Still, the act of punching a hole through space and time. It's no wonder Endgame sees her as enough of a danger they're coming here. You really are a monster.
Thanks.
But you are, after all, our monster.
Which brings us to the more immediate issue. We know Endgame arrived in Chestershire a while ago, and they'll be coming here. So what do we do? You're more familiar with them than we are. What are your thoughts? Most likely they've come with the First Guard. Normally, they're 8 highest-ranking members. Magnus Ulrich is part of the Guard, but he'll be coordinating from Cor Solaris. And there's no Queen rank in Endgame, or else they'd be here too. So we're looking at 2 bishops, 2 rooks, and 2 knights. You think they've only sent that many? There's no way to know for sure. It's possible they'll have other teams on standby, but they won't want to cause a huge disturbance. They definitely won't want this on international news if they can help it. So I don't think they'll send a huge task force for a dramatic cleanup. They much prefer working in the shadows if they can. That means the more public and open we can make this confrontation, the better it'll be for us. We know they're coming, and they know we know, so why don't we extend a polite invitation to meet at a specific location? It's not like they're going to ambush us.
Is it possible that we can talk through the situation?
I doubt it. There's a good chance they'll at least try to force us to hand you over, even if they leave the rest of the court alone. In fact, that may be their bargaining chip. We're not handing Morgan over to them. If they want to attack the court, let them. They may be in for a surprise.
Dang, thanks, Belly. I was surprised to hear him say that, since I didn't feel that he liked me. But I suppose it wouldn't be good for Crimson or the court if I ended up on the other side of the planet.
I agree. We're not bartering with anyone. We don't barter with our people.
So you're saying there may be a confrontation with the most powerful Esper organization on the planet?
There likely will be. So we'll stay close to Cordis on the off chance they try to attack while our strongest people are dealing with them. It'll allow the court to back us up, or vice versa.
Kesa will stay here. We'll have him guarded by a small team, because outside of Morgan, he's probably highest on their list of targets as well.
And what about Brennan? That thing he said about being a villain bothers me.
We can't do anything about him if we don't even know where he is, much less what he's planning. All we can do is stay alert and deal with him as the situation demands. I'll send a message to Endgame's king. Cordis is officially on lockdown. Clear the streets and make sure everyone is prepared for whatever comes. Let's go.